All eyes are on Tropical Storm Helene as it spins in the Caribbean, gaining strength. Good evening, I'm Mike Nasa with this 11 p.m. Tuesday night update on the tropics. All eyes on Helene. It looks like Helene is going to make landfall in Florida on Thursday as a dangerous major hurricane. There's the water vapor image of the Atlantic, and obviously there in the Western Caribbean is Helene getting closer and closer to hurricane intensity. Here's the latest update from the National Hurricane Center as of 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Tropical Storm Helene was at 19.9 north, 85.5 west. That puts it about 100 miles east-southeast of Cozumel on the Yucatan Peninsula. It is moving in that direction, west-northwest at 10 miles per hour, and the winds are 60 miles per hour, although the National Hurricane Center noted in their 11 p.m. discussion Tuesday night that it could be conservative. It might be stronger than 60 miles per hour, so not a hurricane yet, but she's getting close. The pressure is 991 millibars. We will have recon aircraft flying all throughout Helene, throughout the night and into the day on Wednesday to determine the intensity. Helene should become a hurricane overnight or early Wednesday and creep into the Gulf of Mexico, and then begin to round the ridging to the north as this trough digs through the southern areas there of the United States, and it will pull Helene up to the northeast and then slam her right into the Big Bend of Florida Thursday night as a dangerous major hurricane. Right now, the National Hurricane Center is forecasting a Category 3 with 120 mile per hour winds. Helene will spread destructive winds and damage in through areas of Georgia. Weaken quickly wind-wise, but the rainfall will linger and could cause a flood threat as it loops around a low pressure area here in the Tennessee Valley by the time the weekend comes. So Helene is going to be a force to be reckoned with. We do have hurricane warnings in effect from Anclote River to Mexico Beach, Florida, and on the Yucatan Peninsula there from Cabo Catoche to Tulum, and that includes Cozumel. We also have a hurricane watch on the west coast of Florida from Inglewood to Anclote River. That includes Tampa Bay over here, and also a hurricane watch for western Cuba. And we do have tropical storm warnings for the Dry Tortugas, the lower and middle Florida Keys, Flamingo to Anclote River, including Tampa Bay, west of Mexico Beach to the Walton Bay County line here on the Panhandle. And we now have a tropical storm warning from Palm Beach and Martin County line all the way northward to the Flagler-Volusia County line, and then a tropical storm watch for areas of Flagler-Volusia all the way to Savannah River on the eastern seaboard of Florida and Georgia. So again, the thing we are expecting with Helene, besides the intensification, is that it's going to be a very large hurricane as it strikes Florida, so you will have wind impacts on the east coast. Don't think you're out of the woods just because it's going to make landfall near the Big Bend. Here's the upper level water vapor imagery, and I do not like this. You can see the center blowing up right there, convection. It said it's about 100 miles east-southeast, so right in this area, headed in the general direction of the Yucatan and the Yucatan Channel. That is a very moist environment, very favorable conditions, and Helene is getting closer to becoming a hurricane. There's the radar imagery out of Cuba, and the banding features are getting better down here, and so this is where we're going to see an eye eventually develop and move very close. It could make landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula, and that is why if you are in Cozumel here, you guys are under a hurricane warning, and so is Cancun, okay? You guys might get a direct hit from a landfalling hurricane, but it could also move a little bit further north through this Yucatan Channel here between western Cuba and the Yucatan of Mexico. As I mentioned, shear is decreasing over the top of it, very, very favorable, and looking closer, this upper level condition here, fanning out, kind of ventilating Helene, especially off to the north and east, that is very favorable for continued development. As I mentioned, Helene is going to become a much larger system as time goes on, and that's going to exacerbate the situation, especially on the eastern seaboard of Florida when it comes to wind, but that will affect storm surge as well. We are expecting from Ochlockonee River all the way down the coast 10 to 15 feet of surge, and that's going to be with dangerous crashing waves on top, but even over here towards Indian Pass, 5 to 10 feet, and then further south all the way down to Inglewood, you're talking 4 5, 7, 8, 10 feet of storm surge. Very, very dangerous. That's the main threat. Remember what Hurricane Ian did to Fort Myers Beach as a Category 4. This is expected to be a Category 3. So in areas near and to the right of the center where you have that onshore flow, we can expect very dangerous surge. But as I mentioned, Flagler, Volusia County line to South Santee River, South Carolina, you guys could have water rises up to 3 feet because you're going to have that counterclockwise flow around the hurricane pushing water up. So even if the eye is way over here in the Florida Big Bend, if she is large enough, Helene is going to have storm surge and beach erosion on the eastern seaboard. We'll watch that as time goes by. There is a flood threat as well in areas here. This is an update from Atlanta and areas there in Georgia. Conditions throughout Georgia, Wednesday's rain event prime for flash flooding. That's going to be as Helene moves inland. 3 to 5 inches with locally higher amounts. And this is even with a fast-moving storm. Helene is going to be racing, zooming in, but that does not mean we don't have that threat of flooding. So anywhere really from Valdosta to Macon to Atlanta, Athens, Columbus, you guys are all in for it, even up to Chattanooga and areas there of Greenville, South Carolina, getting in on the action. So this is going to be a problem. All the models are in very good agreement. The European here between Apalachicola and, say, Cross City, and the GFS models a little bit further spread, but again, here from the Panhandle all the way over to the Big Bend. So if you are in Appalachia Bay or anywhere near it, even downtown Tallahassee, you guys are going to get hit. Be ready for outages, surge, wind damage, a really nasty strike. Now, what's steering this thing? We have this high to the north of it, and that's been keeping it moving along west-northwest. However, as this area here, this trough digs in, it's currently over Missouri, it's going to dig through the Mississippi Valley, and it's going to push this high on off towards the east. And that's going to spit our Helene into the Gulf of Mexico and then accelerate it really quickly. And then she's going to loop around like that, and that's why you have the winds will be weakening, but the rainfall threat will continue here across the south as we head into the weekend. The key messages from the National Hurricane Center as of 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Number 1, Helene is forecast to intensify and be near hurricane strength when it passes near the northeast coast of the Yucatan on Wednesday. There is a hurricane warning in effect. Secondly, Helene is expected to rapidly intensify and grow in size over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There is a danger of life-threatening storm surge along the entire west coast of Florida and the Florida Big Bend. The highest inundation is expected along the coast of the Florida Big Bend. Residents in those areas should follow advice given by local officials and evacuate if told to do so. There have been mass evacuations beginning in areas there of the Florida Big Bend. Number 3, damaging hurricane force winds are expected along portions of the Big Bend. We have a hurricane warning. Preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion by early Thursday because those tropical storm conditions are going to begin early Thursday. So if you're watching this update after midnight Wednesday morning, 24 hours from now, you ain't going to have time. And finally, Helene will bring heavy rainfall to the western Caribbean, western Cuba, the Yucatan. Considerable flash and urban flooding expected across Florida, the southeast, southern Appalachians, and the Tennessee Valley Wednesday through Friday. That includes the risk of landslides across the southern Appalachians. Widespread minor to moderate river flooding is also likely, and isolated major river flooding is possible. So like I said, as it loops around that low once it moves inland, rainfall will be a big issue. Now the radar out of Miami right now, you guys have some scattered rumbles of thunder, not much, but obviously they're all moving in that direction of the circulation around Helene. The weather is going to deteriorate. Even in the Florida Keys, you'll have water rises, but the real focus will be once this sucker moves into the Gulf of Mexico and how much it strengthens. It looks like it's going to strengthen very, very quickly once it gets a well-defined eye. So if you're turning in for the night, be ready to take action on Wednesday, especially if you live in Mexico Beach, all the way down to areas there where the hurricane warning extends down to the Anclote River. You guys are in for it with Hurricane Helene as she will pull up towards areas of the Big Bend. A tropical storm tonight, very close to hurricane strength. We will continue to do frequent coverage of Helene as she moves into the Gulf of Mexico, expected to strike Florida as a major hurricane on Thursday. I'm Mike Naso, and I will talk to you guys next time with more on Tropical Storm Helene.